Hi, welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo. We have a great show. It sort of came up in the last minute. We're going to have Jewel Miller on, who is the mother of Eric Garner, Eric Garner's youngest daughter, but she couldn't make it. She's coming all the way from Staten Island. That's to be expected. So we made a quick change, and we're having a great program. We're going to have Rabbi Dr. Bernhard H. Rosenberg, excuse me, whose book, The Echoes of the Holocaust, is coming out pretty soon, and we're going to talk, and that's been one of our ongoing subjects. We've talked a lot about World War II and the 1940s in this on this show. My dad worked in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. Shannon's dad before us, fought in the underground in France, and I grew up in New York. And my children have a dual Israeli-American citizenship because their mother was Israeli, and so they were born into that. And they go and visit there, and I have been there. And I've been to the Middle East, and I've been to the West Bank, and I've been to Egypt. And I've had programs where, actually, we've had Palestinian people here a couple times, but mostly I've had as many supporters of Israel as opponents of Israel, all Jewish. Right, so it's a controversial issue in the Jewish community as well. So I'm going to just say that because I have a very varied audience. So we'll make sure they know that I know what you're thinking. Okay, so let's talk about the horrors of the Holocaust, because to me it's the whole idea of never forget, right, is crucial. Right, we should never forget what happened, because in my opinion, you might or might not agree, it's something that could happen again. It could happen other places to other people. It could happen as it happened, right? We saw what happened just recently in South Carolina, where 9 people were shot by a person who basically had the American version, in my opinion, of the Nazi swastika, the Confederate flag, which of course has nothing to do with the Confederacy, very little to do, and a lot to do with the 1920s, 1930s, which is exactly the era that Nazism took root in Europe, right? So tell us about your book, Doctor, and should I call you Doctor or Rabbi?
Whichever.
All right, either one. And tell us about your book and what it covers, what period it covers, what thinking it covers.
Well, I'm deeply honored to be on your show. Thank you. I've written many books, and you can find a whole list of them on Amazon. The purpose of this book is to have the memories of Holocaust survivors, their children, and their grandchildren. We have poems and essays and critical reviews and pictures, all sorts of things. The idea being that I want this used in schools so that when people learn about the Holocaust, they can use this as an additional text.
Mm-hmm. And so this is basically what stories that people tell of how they survived, how they escaped, that kind of thing. Is there hope in the book? Because some of them, like when I read the book about Treblinka and some of these places, it's such a it doesn't come to a good end. None of the stories really come to a good end. Are there stories of hope?
Well, my feeling about the Holocaust is we should stop talking about all the people that were murdered and celebrate the lives of people like my parents who survived Auschwitz and Buchenwald and made a life for themselves. So yes, there is hope. But my message that I want to give tonight is that the Holocaust is around the corner again. People don't like my using the word Holocaust. It irritates them. Because they say it should only be used to what Hitler did to the Jews, and I disagree. Holocaust means the complete and total annihilation, burning, destruction. If Iran gets the nuclear bomb and attacks Israel, Israel retaliates. In my opinion, there will be so much radioactivity if the wind is going to the wrong way that there'll be another Holocaust. People will say, but Israel already has nuclear bombs. Why are you so worried about Iran getting one? And the answer is, I have nothing against the Iranian people. I'm sure they're very nice people. But the leadership basically says, if you die as a martyr, you will go to wherever, and you will have virgins, and you can go and have a merry party. In Israel, every life is important. They will trade one soldier's life for 3,000 Palestinians. It's a different world, so we can't compare the two. But I'm worried that another Holocaust is around the corner.
All right, but so I can't I just don't see. I mean, Israel is a powerful country. It has a powerful, strong army, well-equipped army, well supported by the United States, and our tax dollars here in the United States do buttress the Israeli government. Let me stick on that subject, because often it's said, especially by the right wing here in the United States, the extreme right, not the right that supports Israel, but the extreme right, that Tea Party right, or to the right of the Tea Party, that Israel, that Jewish people pull the strings in the United States. And I've always said, politically, that's impossible. The opposite is true. The United States pulls the strings in Israel in many ways.
Well, this is the old anti-Semitic line. There's nothing new here. Greece is now in bankruptcy. And if you'll take a look at the paper, on the internet, in fact, they're blaming the Jews for what's happening in Greece today. If something goes awry anywhere, we blame the Jews. The Jews are the scapegoat. This is absolutely nothing new.
Well, what do you? Let's move, because we're talking about Iran, the United States. So let's come to the United States. Do you think my microphone is slipping off here? Hang on. Do you think the United States is really a place? Or let me put the question this way: the president of Israel the prime minister or president suggested that after the events with Charlie Hebdo and what happened last year, that Jewish people in Europe should move to Israel. What do you think of that? Do you think that was a rational thing to say, or do you think that's
he's looking for aliyah. He wants to sow Israel so that more people can come there. I mean, it's very rational. Are people going to do that? I don't know. What I can tell you is that anti-Semitism right now in Europe is as bad as it has been since 1933, when Hitler became the chancellor. Things are really, really bad, and they are getting worse.
What are the worst countries? Where is it happening?
Well, it's happening in France. It's happening in Britain. It's happening in Greece. It's happening in Spain. Wherever you look, it's happening. And the truth is, anti-Semitism is in the mother's milk. It never left. Mm-hmm. In Germany, there still is anti-Semitism. There are neo-Nazis. Mm-hmm. It never left. The extremist Muslims, of course, hate everybody. They hate the Christians. They hate the Muslims.
Like ISIS, ISIL.
They hate ISIS. They hate everybody.
Right.
And I really hope we annihilate every single extremist Muslim on the face of the earth.
But is that possible? Because what gives rise to this? I mean, it was said that Al-Qaeda and the rise of all these happened because American troops were in Saudi Arabia. And the American troops were in Saudi Arabia to protect the oil, and in part to protect Israel. So, in other words, is Israel to a certain extent its existence an irritant in this situation? I mean, let me put it this way. Is it a colonial power in some ways, where you have European people going into a third world area and seizing the land, saying it's theirs? I mean, is it different really than Belgian Congo or Indochina or something like that? Will you defend it as something that is more has more realism to it than a colonial power?
So I'm very careful not to talk about Israel. I'm not an expert on Israel. I'm an expert on anti-Semitism and on the Holocaust and on religion. I leave Israel to the politicians who have their own view. But what I can tell you is that long before any of this was going on, so almost since the beginning of creation, anti-Semitism has existed. People have wanted Jews dead from day one. Nothing's changed.
Why is that?
There is no reason. Nobody knows. Jews always look different. They were different.
I've had said jealousy.
Well, yes. I mean,
the Jews are successful.
To go through the history of anti-Semitism, we're blamed for the killing of Jesus. Jesus was Jewish. We didn't murder him. It was Pontius Pilate. We are blamed for being the tax collectors and owning the world and owning everything. We were made tax collectors. It wasn't our choice. Right. So we became known as people to hate.
But errors were made in the sense of there were opportunities. Why didn't people in Germany see it coming? I mean, Hitler was going around saying what he was going to do. I mean, obviously, he put it in terms, but you have to admit, people were saying, oh, it'll just pass, this is just another time. How do you know the difference between this will pass and this is the real thing?
Okay, you're asking two separate questions.
Okay.
As far as the Jews are concerned, they were saying this will pass.
Yeah.
Because in all of Europe, this is normal. Jews are being massacred. They're massacred in Poland. They're massacred in Russia. Okay, so we're having bad times in Germany. It will pass. Everything will be fine. And that's why they didn't rush out. They were wrong. And in fact, they were more afraid of the Russians because there are all sorts of rumors of what the Russians do when they capture people. And based upon their knowledge of World War I, they thought that the Germans were more gentlemanlike. So that proved to be wrong. How
do we get around that? What is it different? Is there a difference? Is there anything different today? Do you think that the Jewish people of the world and their friends and supporters and the people who aren't necessarily Zionists or even like Israel, but people like me, who there's no great, despite I'm giving quite a lot to Israel, whether I like it or not, still, want to see the third world get some justice.
Well, let's go back to your other question, because I wanted to take the non-Jewish position. We had a depression.
Yes.
All sorts of things happened that led history to allow Hitler to become who Hitler was. The Germans were starving to death. They're starving to death. Their money is worthless.
Yes.
There are people dying in the streets.
In the 1930s.
In the 1930s. Here comes along Hitler, and he says, I'm going to save you, I'm going to give you work, I'm going to give you food. Right. So they accepted Hitler.
Right. Oh, right. So and to a certain extent he did, but I think as the war began, they were running out of money. So the war was almost a desperate act. I mean, it was
correct.
It was basically spending it was false. I mean, Hitler's promises.
So who can you blame for World War II? Do you know who?
Who?
America and the Allies. Why?
Yes.
Horrible statement, right? Horrible statement. Because after World War I, right?
Yes.
There's the Treaty of Versailles.
Right.
And what happens? Hitler is still a nobody, but the German people now have no army. They're losing their food. They're isolated. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to take any crazy person that's going to say, I'm going to save you, and accept them. And that's what happened.
Do we see anything like that now? I mean, do you see anything like, I can't get South Carolina out of my mind. So, when I see that flag and I see because I think that person had, what's interesting is that person, the killer, I think he made some strange references to the fact, at least Jews are white, right?
Well, he also said he hates Jews.
Right, exactly.
And usually when you hate blacks, you hate Jews. One of the things people don't know is that Adolf Hitler, there's a whole list of people he didn't like. The Jews being number one, and then you have the Seventh-day Adventists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The blacks were part of that.
What do we do now? I mean, how do we fight this? I mean, I'm half the country is, on edge because of what happened, and we're saying, is it going to happen here? Is there going to be, are whole parts of the United States going to come under control of Nazis? Or are they going to do these kind of pogroms like this they did in Europe? I mean, is this possible in the United States? Can it happen here?
Well, the only thing that can happen here is if we don't have a strong police force. And I advocate having a strong police force. Recently, with all the crazy laws that they're looking for, the police officers are scared to do this and scared to do that. I've been a police chaplain for 41 years.
Really?
These guys don't know what to do. They don't know whether to shoot. They don't know what not to shoot. They're scared to death.
How do we make a strong police force, in your opinion?
I think they have to be militarily have the might that they need. They need to have the guns and the ammunition that is stronger than those of those trying to shoot them. And in this business about you can't stop people because you think they may be guilty, I think is most unfortunate, but it should be allowed because it's just a fact. You can profile somebody, you may be wrong, but 9 out of 10 times you may be right.
But I don't think that's going to happen. It seems a political reality that stop and frisk is gone.
Yes.
It's not going to be coming back. So we have to live with that reality. And when you go down south,
My understanding is that the people who fly the Confederate flag are very well armed.
Yes.
And they're not going to be giving up their guns anytime soon. No. And they don't seem to fear the police.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
And in that way, so the cow's out of the barn, in that way. So what do we do now in that reality?
Well, if we could get back to the days when the NAACP was Jews and blacks working together, and Jews, blacks, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Mexicans working together as one, I think we may have some hope. But right now there is just so much division between different races that things have completely spiraled.
Why is that? Is that the
insanity.
Economy? Is that because the economy has everybody scrambling?
The economy is not bad. The economy is not bad. The economy has been worse. Anti-Semitism equals a bad economy. So anytime things are really bad, that's when you will see more anti-Semitism. That's when you will see people going after Jewish teachers. That's when you will see people just going after the Jews in general. I don't think the economy is bad. There is unemployment. Yeah. We do know that, but that's not what's causing this.
No, what do you think it is?
I don't really have an answer. I don't like the policy of our president. I think he's giving ammunition to people to say, well, I can do whatever I want as long as I elected him. And since I elected him, he's not going to bother with me, and therefore I'm safe. And that bothers me.
Okay. So we're talking with Rabbi Dr. Bernhard H. Rosenberg? Did I get your name right?
Yes,
Rosenberg?
sir.
Sorry. And you are the author of
Echoes of the Holocaust,
which is a story of people like your parents who escaped and survived. Can you tell us some of these stories? What are some of the stories?
Well, I'll tell you my story.
Yes.
I was born in a displaced persons camp in Germany. My parents were from Poland. And what people don't know about the DP camps they were basically the same as concentration camps, except they weren't killing anybody. People don't know this. Yeah. It's a shame.
Yes.
And in these DP camps, when Patton came in to free the Jews from the various camps before they established the DP camps, he said, these crazy people, if you let them out on the earth, they will destroy the world. So you can tell that anti-Semitism already existed then. And when they finally came here to America, the Holocaust survivors, they didn't get much support. Even the Jews that were here said, don't you talk about what happened to you during the Holocaust. No one's going to believe you. They're going to think you're insane. So I was born in a displaced persons camp. My parents had nothing when they came here. I lost 2 siblings. I lost most of my family in the Holocaust.
And it's terribly sad. How did you deal with that, and how do people deal with that?
Well, some people dealt better than other people. Some people were depressed. Some people had hope. What I say to everybody is, remember the Holocaust survivors who survived. Remember how they made something of themselves and how they had hope to survive here in America.
I see. And tell us, tell us more about what you remember as a child. I mean, what was it like in that camp? I mean,
the camp part I don't remember. I was a little baby,
right? Yeah.
But what I do remember is always looking at my father's arm with the Auschwitz numbers on it.
Right.
I always remember every time the Holocaust was mentioned, my mother crying.
Yes.
My mother was in Skaržisko, which was the work camp that made bombs for the Nazis.
Yes.
And she looked 60 when she was 30.
Yes.
Because of the chemicals that were used to make these bombs. And a lot of people came out of this very depressed, and a lot of people came out of this more religious and having hope.
I see. Okay. And who do you like in Germany as a whole? I mean, afterwards there seems to have been a change, and the German people seem different in some ways than they were in those days. It seems that in many ways Germany is put as like one of the more progressive countries in the world. I mean, it's a country that has made one of the most amazing transformations in history, really. You know, when you think of how it was and how it is today, one of the most politically correct countries in the world. Do you think it's possible for there to be redemption of people who participated, or the descendants of people who participated in this kind of thing?
I don't blame the children and the grandchildren of Nazis. I don't blame them. I will never forget, I will never forgive the Nazis. And if you're 90 years old and you're a Nazi and you haven't been caught, I hope you die in hell. Nothing's going to change.
Right. And so it was really a choice that those specific people made, right? A choice that certain people, you know, who you could name, who were on a census, who were known, made. Right? I have
A choice to what? Survive?
No, a choice as far as not to be a Nazi, right? It's a specific choice they made. They had they came to a crossroads in their lives and they chose to be a Nazi.
But don't forget that Hitler had developed Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and so from the little age, they were taught to hate Jews.
From the very beginning.
From the very beginning.
How did that change, though? Is it just because they lost the war and now, or was there really just by changing the educational system, by basically having the four powers look over their shoulders and say you have to change the way you teach people and raise people and what you say to people, and you have to make swastikas illegal, and you have to, you know, arrest these people if they start again with their business? You know, is that how you go about it? I mean, stopping this from happening?
I think it's a combination, because you still have the neo-Nazis that are there.
Yeah.
You still have people that just hate the Jews.
Well, because I'm thinking in terms of how are we going to go down to South Carolina and to these places right here in Staten Island, New York, and root this stuff out? How do we change America? How do we learn from this experience?
Only when you see unity among all the races, and when one race is in trouble, that other people come out to support that race.
Yeah.
Until that happens, nothing will change. A rabbi was murdered in Florida. I don't see the president speaking. In fact, they didn't even call it a bias crime. Why isn't he speaking out? Okay, blacks are murdered. He's speaking out. Well, he should. Okay, but speak out about other people too.
Yeah. Right.
So until there is unity within different races to come to the aid of other races, I don't see any change.
And what could spark that unity? What do you think? What do you try and do through your book and your work?
Well, you know what I know to spark the change? 9/11. I'm not a New Yorker. I was raised in Kansas City, Missouri. And when I first came to New York, as a young man, I found it very cold. And no one would talk to you. People are afraid to talk to you. They don't want to talk to you. I found that after 9/11, I was one of the chaplains, by the way, at 9/11. People changed. People changed. So sometimes out of adversity, positive things will happen.
Well, it seems that a lot of that has fallen to the wayside, especially after the horrors of two wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, which didn't work out as well as people thought they would. Although I don't really understand why people didn't see, or they had to look, because back in history the British tried the same thing, and it's conquering a country and holding it is not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, in hindsight, it was a huge mistake.
All right. How could we have done it differently?
I'm not an expert in that. I'm not a politician.
Right. Yes.
I don't know. We shouldn't have gone in.
Interesting. So I like coming back to how we can take the lessons of the Holocaust to the United States here, right, and make this a better country, because I am still horrified by what happened in South Carolina, and I know there's a lot of people who think the same way as that.
Never allow a Hitler to raise his ugly head.
Do you see one? Do you see one?
I see many.
Do you see really many? Like
I see many.
Little
Hitlers.
Little Hitlers, looking for the day when they could...
all these guys that are busy killing children, all these people that are busy killing people in the Naval Yard, all these people that are busy going in South Carolina killing these people in a church, they're looking for fame. They're little Hitlers. They want fame. And the only way to be successful against them is not give them that fame. And whatever you do, unite. If you unite, they cannot win.
To put them so deep maybe in the prison hole that they never ever come out.
That's correct.
And never seen, never heard of it. Don't give them, don't write books about them, don't publicize what they did, even to make it to put a positive spin on things.
They want fame. Don't give it to them.
Right. What about the symbol? I mean, do you see a similarity between this Confederate flag and the swastika flag?
Problem I have no thoughts on the Confederate flag.
Right.
I really don't. But I have a lot of thoughts on the Nazi symbolism.
Let's hear it.
The ADL made a huge mistake when they said that the Nazi swastika is no longer symbolic of anti-Semitism. This was said years ago, and I went public and fought them. Okay, the Nazi swastika is not the Indian swastika. Okay, it's not a good luck charm from 2,000 years ago. It's the swastika that Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party had to make sure that 6 million Jews died together with millions of other people. And that law should be made that if you put a swastika anywhere, that is called a bias crime, and you should pay and stay in jail.
Isn't it? I
No.
thought it was. No, it's not.
It doesn't. It's not a bias crime by just having a swastika alone.
Right.
You have to say "dirty Jew"
Right.
and it has to be heard.
I
My
see.
wife and I were attacked walking to my synagogue, which had 3 swastikas on it. We were attacked again walking back from our synagogue.
That's horrifying that this still happens in the
It
same
still
way.
happens. We were attacked, and it was not considered a bias crime because there was no "you dirty Jew" involved with the event.
I see. So that's the way the law is in the United States.
Yes.
Right. And so you think that, but you know, we have this First Amendment. It's a little different than in Germany and in France where these things are illegal, but they had more direct experience with it. In the United States, it's
Yes.
still considered, you're sort of on the fringe if you start using that kind of thing. So-
Also, I don't think the police departments take the swastika very seriously.
no.
In my town, there were 9 swastikas in 1 year. Haven't caught anybody yet.
Right. Well, there was a time when bikers and things like that were wearing them, and
Yes.
even a punk rock musician, Sid Vicious, wore one. I don't think they really were Nazis, but I think that they really didn't understand what they were doing.
Well, we have to educate them.
Yeah, and I think even I was talking to Sonny Barger, who did at one time wear one when he was a Hell's Angel, and he does not anymore, and they're banned from that club, from the Hell's Angels,
Right.
nowadays. And he said, you know, he got a little stickly when I asked him about it, but at the same time he said, you know, after he got stickly about it, we don't use it anymore. You know?
Right.
So I think he might have learned this. Even the bikers can learn a lesson sometimes.
Swastika equals hatred of Jews.
Right, right. And you have to understand that it's not just a symbol. It's not just a way to piss people off. It
Right.
really is a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Right, because it has a specific meaning of murdering an entire people, right?
And usually when you have swastika, sometimes you'll have KKK going along
Well,
with
of
it.
course, which is similar, and all these symbols, you know, all intermat. One's they have cultural specificity, right? The different parts of the world, but we know what they all mean. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Bernhard Rosenberg, who has written this book, Echoes of the Holocaust, and I think we should never forget the Holocaust because it could happen again. And you know, you always have to be on the toes, whether we agree or disagree on every single point. We know that hatred has to be dealt with.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week, and we're going to have a great show for you next week. So thanks, and welcome to Let Them Talk, and we'll see you again next week, 8 o'clock.
Great.
All right, great. Here we go.
Wonderful.